For early access plus exclusive content, facilitated discussions, live one-on-one Q&As, and more, become a patron at patreon.com/BrucePointset. Yeah. Happy May, everyone. It's Bruce Pointset. We're back for our feature newsletter interview. Special guest, Evan Segura, who's with me today. Evan is a young Chicano organizer, mental health counselor, and current president of the Portland Psychedelic Society. He played a key role in passing Measure 109 and 110, which legalized psilocybin services and decriminalized personal amounts of all drugs in Oregon. He's also an amateur mycologist and has taught thousands of people how to develop the right to relationship with mushrooms and cultivate their own medicine. He spends most of his time organizing within psychedelic community, stomping around the forest, looking at mushrooms, and riding his motorcycle along the coast. And right now I'm jealous because he's broadcasting in from beautiful Mexico while Portland is dreary as hell right now. But that said, Evan, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing beautiful. I'm blessed. I'm extremely grateful to be alive and extremely grateful to be on your show. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Yeah, and I'm honestly happy to have you. You know, it's interesting with just the discussion around psychedelics and thinking about just how much it's evolved, because it wasn't really that long ago, at least for me anyway, it felt like, you know, something like, it's kind of like something you had to like whisper about. Like it wasn't really, you know, a
100%.
discussion in the mainstream. I remember I was literally talking with someone this weekend where, you know, I was just kind of like, almost like dancing. Cause I was talking about, you know, my excitement kind of about this interview actually. I was like, yeah, have you done the way you kind of like dance around? Like, yeah, I'm not sure if you've, you know, done mushrooms before. And the person's like, oh yeah. A couple times like, oh yeah, that's right. It's 2022. I always have to remind myself. But yeah, just start off, can you just talk about, you know, we're gonna get into like your work and kind of your just journey with psychedelics, but can you just talk about how the conversation has evolved? And I think just in your line of work, like what's the biggest misconception people bring to you when it comes to mushrooms in particular and psychedelics in general?
I think the biggest misconception that people bring is that mushrooms are these bad drugs that are your mind that are making you gonna go crazy. So many people are so brainwashed from the failed miseducation of the war on drugs, you know, that started in the early 70s and went on into the late 80s and 90s and still exists today. I mean, drug education that we teach our children in school, that I'm sure you've heard, Bruce, and I know I've heard in school through the DARE program, is complete bullshit, honestly, like all lies. If anything, they make drugs seem pretty interesting to a lot of kids, you know, just I think the opposite of what they're trying to do. But I think the normalization of psychedelics is a really cool thing. I've had very similar experiences the last couple of weeks, just been at, you know, bars around Portland and just overhearing an incredible amount of conversations about mushrooms. Just everybody's talking about their last mushroom trip or the next upcoming mushroom trip or what microdosing is doing for their lives right now. And it's it's surreal. But I'm born and raised in Chicago, and it was a huge culture shock even 3 years ago for me to come to Portland and understand just how comfortable everybody is talking about drugs like psychedelics and marijuana. You know, people just smoking, you know, blunts on the street. It's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's so cool. But yeah, it's wild. A new world. For sure.
Absolutely. So we talked in the intro a little bit about measures 109 and 110 and the passage, but you know, I know there's a lot of people who probably just like seen this on the periphery, but are wondering, okay, so what do these legalization measures mean? What do they allow and what do they not allow? And where's the next frontier? in this,
Yeah.
the legalization fight.
Yeah. So Measure 109 legalizes the use of psilocybin in a regulated medical system. So you can go to registered and licensed service centers and take a dose of mushrooms with a licensed psilocybin facilitator. And that is the only way that you can legally use psilocybin mushrooms as of right now in Oregon. So anyone else, doing mushrooms in any other setting claiming that it's legal is just miseducated. That's all. Measure 110 decriminalized personal amounts of all drugs. You can have up to 12 grams of psilocybin containing material, 40 hits of LSD, which I don't consider a personal amount, but if you do, that's I'm not exactly sure on the exact amounts of all the other drugs, but it's just decriminalized, which means that police cannot make it a priority to bust somebody just because they are suspicious that they have drugs on them. And if they do have drugs on them and they're found while, getting hassled or, arrested for something else, then they can only get $100 fine. It's like a parking ticket, And they can also get out of that fine by taking a mental health assessment test through the OHA, through the Measure 110 system. So you go, you take this test, you talk to somebody, and they gauge whether or not you're addicted to a certain substance and you need help, and you should really check out some recovery services that Measure 110 also provided a ton of funding for. So in the last 2 years, a lot of recovery and treatment centers in Portland and across the state have gotten a huge amount of funding directed their way to just increase those services for people that are struggling. The last question, that you asked is just like, what is next? Bruce, but it's just I think the next frontier is full decriminalization. We kind of have this like decriminalization with an asterisk sign after it, where we're really just trying to help. How I see it, we're trying to help people that are addicted to harder drugs that really need support. But all of the people that just want to, go to the coast and, a couple grams of mushrooms with their friends and go on a hike, or even hang out in their backyards, are technically, committing a felony. And I see full decriminalization as the next kind of move forward for people to be able to feel completely safe using whatever they want to use for however and why ever they want to use it. Because while we have personal use decriminalized, that doesn't decriminalize the sale of any of these substances, that doesn't decriminalize the growing or manufacturing of any of these substances. So we're basically saying, we're basically just turning a blind eye to everything else that's going on, when, shout out to all of the drug dealers and drug manufacturers in the world that are making these beautiful experiences possible for us and taking a huge, huge risk in doing so. And they shouldn't really have to do that, a lot of us in the psychedelic industry are watching this wave of wealthy, white, rich men come in from the cannabis industry, ready to pour their tens of millions that they have stolen from that market into this new market. And now there's all these folks that have been doing this for a really long time in a really safe and responsible way that are about to just get swept either out of the market or into a cage in prison because there's now competition, in what they're supposed to be doing. So I think it's extremely important to fully decriminalize as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that really I want to put a pin in that, because I want to explore specifically being a person of color in the psychedelic space. But before we get to that, you just mentioned something that really caught my eye there. But when we talk about, again, the implications of decriminalization and then, what's next, I think something because I've been much more plugged into just, marijuana decriminalization and legalization and one of the things that's been kind of frustrating for me is knowing the implications beyond just like people who, you know, partake, and seeing a lot of people otherwise looking and saying, okay, well, that's just an issue for you all. And I feel like I see that, except kind of almost like exponentially with psychedelics. So can you just talk about why this should be of interest to people who are not, you know, maybe not directly involved with psychedelics?
Yeah, why it should be an issue, people not directly involved with psychedelics. I mean, I think it just has to do with our freedom in general, you know, our freedom to explore our own consciousness, and also our freedom to heal ourselves. You know, as only speaking as someone born in the United States of America, we were dealing with a shattered healthcare system, and you know, as a, not to mention a mental health care system that is just completely inaccessible, especially to Black and Brown people in the United States, not only because of prohibitive things like cost, but just cultural barriers that make, you know, something like therapy kind of really hard to access, you know, with, you know, the way toxic masculinity, I can only speak for machismo in Latino communities. It really kind of blocks us from being able to take care of ourselves and, you know, live happy and healthy lives. So I think there's a huge crossover between the need for a better healthcare system and the need for psychedelics. The fact that, you know, psychedelics can be used as a much more effective treatment for mental illnesses like anxiety and PTSD and depression, which 1 in every 5 Americans are noted to like have been diagnosed with in the last year. I think that it's extremely important that we are free to explore other opportunities and other things that might be able to help us live a better life. So I guess, yeah, I think that's how I feel like it's important for other folks that maybe, you know, have never tried a psychedelic, need to know that this is available for them.
Right. So that kind of transitions into the work of the Portland Psychedelic Society. And you know, we talked earlier, you lived and worked, you know, both around the country, around the world. But first off, just when did you move to Portland, and then when did you get started with the Portland Psychedelic Society?
Yeah. So I moved to Portland in January of 2019. The fall before, I was actually hitchhiking with a friend from Canada through Portland, and just happened to catch Portland Psychedelic Society meeting that they were hosting with this dude, Paul Stamets, who's a really famous mycologist. And I met this guy named Matt at this meeting, and he told me that he was sitting for people underground and facilitating these psilocybin experiences. And I've been doing mushrooms since I was 13. I think that they are magical allies that we have been blessed with on this planet. And so I was fascinated by the work this man was doing, and studying grow mushrooms at the time. And so I started talking to him about growing them, and he said he's never tried it. Long story short, 2 months later, this guy invites me to live with him and his family on Mount Tabor in exchange for helping him grow his own medicine for his own clients. And he started kind of teaching me the ways of sitting with people and delivering these experiences. And I thought it was, and I still think it is, the coolest job that I've ever had. I can't tell you how much like purpose and meaning it brings to my life to be able to share these transformative experiences with people and make sure that there's a safe, empathetic person there to kind of walk them through the whole process and make them feel comfortable. And yeah, that person started bringing me to the Portland Psychedelic. and I started connected to the community and to the campaigns that were going on to make this medicine more accessible, or as most accessible as we thought was possible in 2019. I think the bar is much, much higher now that we've done a lot of the research and it's been normalized, and a million people, voted yes for psilocybin in 2020. I think it kind of broadened our horizons, but we haven't really lived up to that quite yet.
Yeah, and I was just browsing the PPS site, and one of the things that really caught my eye is just like you all have just these really, it's like a thorough list of like different groups, whether it be like the BIPOC group, queer group, veterans group, and it just, one, just in cultivating and facilitating like just some stuff with my work, I'm just looking at all these different groups and saying, wow, that's a lot. But at the same, it got me just thinking, like, what is, like, one, is there such thing as like a typical day at Portland Psychedelic Society? And if so, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, a typical day. So we're a very young nonprofit. We've only been registered for a few years, and we're an all volunteer nonprofit. We've never gotten, corporate sponsorship or funding in that degree. So the organization has shifted and transitioned a lot with any volunteer organization. We're growing a lot in the last few months because of how close we're getting to the Measure 109 rollout, and how important a lot of people are really realizing our group is going to be to the success of this program. Like you said, we've got so many different groups, 17 monthly groups that are completely free to attend. Anyone can join. We work so hard to provide these these brave spaces for people to share these experiences that so many folks have been holding in their entire lives. We see relief, for people when they just get to be in a space where everybody kind of understands what they went through in that experience. And a lot of people that understand the fear of folks that have never tried these substances, and are able to provide that support as well. I think it's really important that we have all these different affinity groups, because folks just more comfortable in their own communities. The queer group, the BIPOC support group, we have a group for neurodivergent folks that are on the spectrum. There's so many different factors that go into having like your own unique psychedelic experience. And I think it's really important that we acknowledge that, as a community, as a city, there's different ways to do these substances, and we all have to accept that. I think that's one of the biggest struggles of Measure 109 is we're trying to figure out what is the one size fits all mushroom experience we can sell to every single Oregonian. And the truth is, there's not one. This is going to have to be a diverse program to make everybody feel welcome and everybody feel at home, especially because they're about to be, in one of the most vulnerable states of consciousness that they've ever been in their entire lives, after using these medicines. So we really got to make people feel accepted and welcome, and like there's a place for them, in this city, in this community, after they have this experience, and as they integrate that. So every week we have 4 or 5 different groups, and an average day at the Portland Psychedelic Society just looks like working with the head volunteers at the office, or communicating through Slack, just to make sure that the whole kind of system is running smoothly. But we're putting a lot of energy into an event that we're hosting later in June 25th and 26th, the Psychedelic Symposium. And it's going to be a large community gathering of local experts and legislators and researchers and organizational leaders, so that all the folks in Portland can come through and meet the people that are shaping this movement, and really learn about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it and how can people get involved? I mean, the Portland Psychedelic Society is the third largest psychedelic society in the world. There's not that many regions of the world where psychedelics are making this, this huge comeback. And in a lot of ways, it's making history. Like, there's never been such a large attempt to bring psychedelics back into the mainstream and reintegrate it into our lives anywhere in the world other than what Oregon is doing right now. So yeah, it's a lot to carry, but I think there's an incredible amount of intelligent, brilliant minds in Portland working to make this happen in a way that is going to help a lot of people. So
yeah, and sort of to the point on like affinity groups, and specifically, I'm just curious as like, a Chicano organizer in this space, as far as yeah, like I could, make assumptions as just being in Oregon, but in terms of yeah, people of color in positions of leadership in the psychedelic space, like I don't know what would your assessment be?
it's hard, man. It's hard. Yeah, I mean, Portland is white, but the psychedelics community is even whiter, if that's even possible. There's a lot of barriers, folks who have to break to be able to feel comfortable accessing these medicines, and it's a lot of work to convince mostly older white people of that within this movement. I mean, there's tons that are totally hip to it and are understanding and are allies and trying to do all they can to educate those around them, and then there are tons that are just pulling the blindfold over their eyes and saying, leave politics out of psychedelics, we are all one, all one human race, that's what psychedelics allow you to experience, this one love. And like, sure, there's a sprinkle of truth in that, and I'm not like completely dismissing that, but they are completely bypassing the real issues that that are everywhere in America. I mean, everywhere in Portland, there's just a much less access for folks of color in this movement. And yeah, I'm doing everything that I can to the Portland Psychedelic Society, like an inclusive space, but it's gonna take a lot more work. And I'm, I don't have all the answers myself, but I would encourage all Black and Brown folks to join our BIPOC integration circle, and also connect with other organizations around Portland that are being built for Black and Brown people. I would recommend checking out the House of Jah City, which is a spiritual farming family that uses plant medicines and other healthy ways of living to uplift Black folks in Portland. I would also recommend checking out Fruiting Bodies Collective, run by Elon Hagans, which is a place for marginalized communities to come together and learn more about the healing properties of mushrooms. And also, Darren, who does a lot of really great research about Black and Brown folks and our history using psychedelics, going way back to parts of Mexico and Africa, and just researching like how our ancestors have been using these medicines for tens of thousands of years, which is a really powerful component of this whole movement that we should all be really proud of.
Yeah, that last name you said, Darren
LeBaron. Yep, DARREN LEBARON.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, I just what you said as far as like, can something in Portland be like a group and it be whiter than Portland already. But, you know, I feel that just because like in a lot of, for lack of better terms, like, you know, niche communities, there's definitely, you know, I see that like, oh, this would be like the things that like I'm interested or if, you know, been a benefit to me. But like it feels like you have to almost like evangelize and do a lot of other work just to like bring other people in and be like, hey, you know, it's safe here or it's cool here. Or like we're cultivating this space for us in here. But like you said, it's a lot of legwork, you know.
Mhm.
But to that end, just with your own story, I was, you know, again, just reading through your bio, and one of the things you talk about is just, you know, using this as like medicine, especially like, you know, working with foster children, just like all the stress and stuff you take on from that. Can you just talk a little bit more about how like, you know, utilizing psychedelics as medicine has helped you cope with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. They psilocybin mushrooms specifically for me just have this incredible ability to allow me to zoom out and see the bigger picture of my own life, of all of the lives of people around me, and of our whole planet. You know, our whole existence on this planet, which is something that everybody should think about every once in a while. You know, and like really think about like what are you doing here? What is everybody doing here? You know, and how can we live the best life that is possible? And, you know, working within the foster care industry, one of the darkest, I think, like shadows of our society that nobody really wants to think about, you know, hundreds, thousands of children in the United States that are without parents because they're either dead or in jail or abusive and are now in these foster facilities. And yeah, the amount of support that we receive from our greater community is incredibly small, and so it feels like a huge toll on every counselor that's working inside of those facilities to be able to try to, you know, provide support for them while taking care of themselves and maintaining boundaries so that they can continue in this work. And honestly, that's not even possible. You know, I've been working as a counselor at a foster homes for the last 3 years. Typical duration of employment there is about 3 months. Is how long people make it before they just check out. You know, yeah. Our whole team practically transitions every year, and I've watched it happen, you know, 3 times now. And I can't help but think that, you know, I have a certain endurance through absorbing this trauma because of how often I use this medicine that just grounds me and you know, helps me kind of release so much of this trauma that is not mine. I think that almost everybody in the healthcare service industry should have some type of relationship with psychedelics, just because of the way that they kind of fill you back up. You know, we use this metaphor of like having every, you know, counselor having this cup, and they pour their cup out, you know, to the kids, they pour their cup out to the other coworkers, but they got to be making sure that they're filling up their own cup, you know, through whatever way is possible. And when I take, you know, 2 grams of psilocybin mushrooms and I sit in a forest with a close friend, my cup is overflowing for weeks. You know, it allows me to help so much, and that is such a beautiful gift that I'm so grateful for.
Before I let you get out of here and get back to your vacation, I did want to talk about the Psychedelic Symposium coming up. Can you just again remind people one of the dates, and then two, like what can people expect who are interested in attending?
So the last conference that we had was in 2019, and we had 800 people attend at the Revolution Hall. And it was this huge event. We flew in, you know, psychedelic leaders from all over the country. We had Clindi E from Detroit, James Fadiman, who's a microdosing expert from San Francisco. Anthony Bossis, Rachel Harris from Seattle, like all of these, incredible, brilliant researchers, psychedelic minds. But what I want more people to be aware of is just how proud they should be of what is happening in their own city right here in Portland. There's enough, incredible research and like social research, just different organizations like the Portland Psychedelic Society trying to do something new and kind of unheard of, to fill up a whole week of presentations and panels and talks like that. So our keynote speakers are Hanifa Naya Washington. She helped co-found this project called the Fireside Project. And this is a phone number that anybody in the United States can call and be connected to a person to talk about psychedelic experiences with. They could be like tripping, on the phone, or they can be coming down from a trip and just need some support. They could be preparing for a trip and they just need some words of affirmation and advice. So Hanifa is going to be talking about what it's been like to kind of roll out that hotline and what they've learned from all these people tripping all over the country and calling in for help. They've helped prevent like over 1,000 calls to police and to emergency services because they were able to just talk someone through it. Someone was kind of freaking out, kind of thought that they were going a little crazy, and instead of calling the cops and having an ambulance come and having this extremely traumatic experience, they just got connected to this nice person on the phone that was able to talk them through what they were going through and go through some breathing exercises, assure them everything was going to be cool. And that's a revolutionary tool that our community is going to have access to for forever. I just want to shout out that phone number is 62-Fireside or 623-473-7433. So save that in your phone. You never know when you're going to need it. You never know when you're going to have to, give that number to a friend or something like that. But I really think anyone using drugs, especially psychedelic drugs, should have that there just in case. So Hanifa is going to be talking about that. And then our other keynote speaker, Christopher, is a researcher that works at the VA and at OHSU, doing some incredible research on the efficacy of psilocybin and its ability to treat depression. And he's also doing some of the first research on group ceremonies in the United States and how can we, use these medicines together in an effective way to help treat mental illnesses for folks. So he's doing some really incredible work. We've got Dr. Pilar Hernandez from Lewis and Clark University talking about colonization and cultural appropriation in psychedelics. We've got Nyanga Uuka from the House of Jah City talking about providing space in the psychedelics for marginalized communities. Talise Katura from Ancestral Seed talking about ways to develop rituals and a relationship with your ancestors through psychedelics and plant medicine. Laura Riley talking about ethics of touch in psychedelic spaces, how we should be holding each other, different ways and consensual methods for us to have the safest experience. It's going to be a really, really incredible gathering of folks this summer. And we're hoping to start to have these symposiums at least twice a year to just be able to get everybody together and strengthen our community and educate our community on what's happening. There's a lot happening all over the world right now. This is a global psychedelic movement, but Portland is one of the leaders, if not the leader in the psychedelic movement in the whole planet. And we got to be really proud about that and figure out how can we best work together,
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for people, that's Psychedelic Symposium is June 25th and 26th at the Alberta Abbey, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so that sounds exciting. And I really latch on to just what you're saying as far as not just the conversation itself, but the fact that Portland is a place where so many exciting things are happening, and yeah, you know, it's an opportunity to, you know, I feel like it almost becomes cliche to say, you know, be a part of something bigger than yourself, but really, like, this is, you know, it's an opportunity to be a part of something that is, you know, shaping trends literally around the world. So yeah, encourage people to check that out. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Evan, thanks again for taking the time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the people before we hop off?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would share is to check out Dr. Carl Hart. He's got this book. It's called Drug Use for Grown-Ups, and you know, it really helps kind of set the scene for, I think, the next at least the next decade, how we should be kind of orienting our perspective around using drugs and how to treat people that use drugs as a society. Yeah, you know, he's got some hot takes, but really valuable information. So he's got TED Talks, he's got podcasts. I highly recommend him. Carl Hart, Hart, and if anyone's listening to this and is just amped, stoked, and ready to, you know, eat those mushrooms that they got from their friend a couple years ago and have just been sitting in their drawer, start slow. You know, you don't have to eat all of them. Just start slow. Take your time. You know, there's no rush, and be gentle with yourself.
Awesome. Well, yeah, Evan Segura, president of the Portland Psychedelic Society. Thank you again for taking the time and, you know, helping to shed some light on the psychedelic movement. And also, again, Portland Psychedelic Symposium, June 25th, 26th at the Alberta Abbey. Mark your calendars. Yeah, Evan,
Right on.
enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the vacation. Enjoy the so much better weather than we're getting out here in Portland right now.
Thank you so much, Bruce, man. It was an honor to be on your show. This was incredible.
Yeah, take care. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please like and share and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of the latest videos. Thank you.